Hey everybody, Gary here with Guitar Tricks, and in this video we're going to go over some essential 7th chords for the blues. So you just heard me in that intro kind of cycle through some different voicings I like to use, and if you know different voicings you could almost create like a melodic kind of effect by playing the same chord in different areas over the neck. So I kind of divide it into my E string shapes, my A string shapes, my D string shapes. And my G string shapes, yeah. So I'm going to share that. I think of the chords with the root note on E, A, D, and G. So I'm going to share with you my favorite just basic 7th chord voicings that you could use in the blues, and then you could try to mix and match them how I did in the intro. Before we get into the lesson, please go ahead and click subscribe so that you get all of the latest and greatest content from Guitar Tricks. And if you want to be notified of any new lesson, be sure to also tap the bell. And please let us know in the comments any videos that you'd like to see us make for the channel. That's always where we're looking to get ideas. All right, let's get into it. Let's do an A blues. So the first thing that we want to know is definitely the open position, right? So we have this A, and this is an A7. So the blues, a typical standard blues uses 7th chords. These are major chords with a minor 7th added to the chord. So it's like a regular A chord, for instance, but in this chord we have 2 A's, so we get rid of one of the A's, one of the root notes, and we replace it with a minor 7th, which in this case is the note G. If you ever want to find that minor 7th relative to a root note, just go down a whole step or 2 frets. So from this A, we go down to the open G. So G is the minor 7th of A, and now we have a 4-note chord. In this case, we have the notes A, C sharp, E, and G. That's a major chord, which is A, C sharp, and E, and a minor 7th, which is G. A minor 7th is always a whole step underneath a root note, right? Because you go all the way up to 7, and after 7 comes 1 again. But that 7 is hanging out a whole step below the tonic. And in the blues, we use all dominant 7th chords. In regular diatonic harmony, usually only the 5th chord in a key is a dominant 7th chord, but in the blues we make them all dominant 7th chords, which is kind of a cool thing. It's a different kind of a harmony, right? So there's our A7. So that's one way to play it with an A string root. Now if we think of that as a movable shape, move it up to the 12th fret and it looks like this. See, it looks exactly the same, but our finger is acting like a capo, right? But the shape is exactly the same as it was down here. If I play it, for instance, with my ring finger and my pinky, and then slide that up 12 frets, same chord. Okay, so there's one voicing based on the open position. And while we're on a voicing with an A string root note, there's one other really great voicing with an A string root note, so we'll look at that next. And now this is often referred to as the C shape, because if we play a C7 down here, it's the same shape, but we're moving it to an A. In this case, you're going to want to mute the high E string and the low E string. So I like to kind of mute them with the flesh of my index finger and my thumb. Now let's go to the low E string. So the low E string, the main voicing here, looks like this. It's basically like a regular E-shaped bar chord. Right here's an E. But we lift up the pinky, right? And now while we're on the topic of that, let's think about, I said E shape. Well, the 5 chord in an A blues is an E7, so bringing that all the way down to open position, there's one way to play the E7, right? And now, but if we move it up to the tonic A, it's an A7. Right? And for this bar chord, you see I bring my elbow in and I kind of twist. So I get a lot of muscle from the forearm instead of the fingers. And with that twisting motion, my index finger's kind of like on the side of the, the side of the finger is on the fretboard, which gives me a little bit of wiggle room. If I'm straight on, I can't wiggle at all, or else I'll stop pressing the strings down. So there's one way to play it. Now some people like to skip over the A string and do something like this, in which case you don't need the bar, which is nice, or you could just play the top 4 strings like this, right? So anytime you play a big chord, think about if you could just chunk it into sections, right? Some notes are more important than others. Like in this chord, in order for it to be a real dominant 7th chord, you have to at least have the 3rd and the flat 7th. So in this case, here's the flat 7, and here's the major 3rd. That's the sound right there. And what that is, that's called a tritone, and that's a very big part of the blues sound, is this tritone, or called a diminished fifth, between this note and this note. It's very dissonant, but it doesn't sound quite as dissonant when we add in the rest of the chord. It's just kind of embedded inside of it. So when I play just this top 4 strings, I still have that tritone. And when I play it like this, it's still there. Now also on this E shape, we can use the pinky to add another flat 7 right here like this. So that's another option. So far we have these chords. Alright, now if we go to the D string root, well, let's think about a D7, which is one of the chords we're going to play, right? It looks like this. But now if I play that with these 3 fingers and think about my finger as behind the nut, right? And then I move that up to the note A, which is on the 7th fret of the D string. Now we have this chord. I often think of this as the Red House chord. If you listen to Jimi Hendrix's Red House intro, I won't play it here, but he uses this chord voicing. And again, you know, we can leave out the root and just play the little 3-note shape right there. So it's all about knowing where's that root note here. If you don't know this string very well, you could always find this note from this string. Go over 2, down 2, and that's an octave. A, right? And then the last one I like to play is this one right here. Now this kind of comes out of the G shape, so this shape right here. Right, if we think about a G7, right? And then if we just move that up a whole step to here. And in that case, the root note is on the G string. So that's a great one right there. So, to recap, E string, A string, we have this one, same thing, an octave down, and then we also have this one, the C shape. Then the D string, and then the G string. Okay, so over those first 4 bars of the blues, which is just, if we play an A7, I could go between this and then to there, or so there, for this shape right here, I just played the top 3 strings. Right, because when you're playing with a full band, a lot of times you don't need to play all the lower strings. You could just focus on the higher strings. All right, so then we get to the next chord, which is D7. Now it's all the same shape. We've got open D7. We've got this D7. This D7. This one. This one. This one. I already showed you all those shapes, but now it's just applying it to this root note. So the A string shapes are these and this. Then the E string shape. Right? Then the D string shape. And then the G string shape. And then for the E7, same thing. Here's an E. Let's start with the open E. So there's that E shape. Then we have, let's say, the D string, the A string, the G string, and then of course we can, go past the 12th fret as well. All right, so now I want you to experiment with these voicings, okay? I'm just gonna play a little bit of a bass line over a 12-bar blues, and you play the chords. Here we go. A 1, 2, a 1, 2, 3, 4, A, D, A, A, D, D, A to the E, E, D, A, E. One more round. A, D, A, D, D, A, E, D, A to E. All right, everybody, I hope you enjoyed that lesson. If you want to learn more about playing guitar and take a step-by-step approach with a fundamentals course or genre-specific courses like blues, country, rock, and access a library of high-quality song lessons with multiple videos per song with downloadable tab, head over to guitartricks.com. Happy playing, and I'll see you in the next lesson.